So it seems like up to now, this so-called Fianchetto Gambit has proven to be lethal against many players, not just on League Chess, but even on chess.com. As dubious as this Gambit looks, it's hardly easy for White to crack it. I mean, the main goal of this Gambit is quick development, of course, but it's more than quick development, as you are going to see in the game that I'm going to play. And another beauty of this Gambit is that it's more like a setup, a system where you play the same things over and over regardless of what your opponent does. For example, in my first tutorial videos, I said the main plan is to go queen d6, guarding the g6 pawn and also preventing bishop f4 by White. And so after playing this, the next move would be something like bishop g4, which goes together with knight f3, or even after White plays pawn to h3, because White can't just take our light squared bishop on g4. Then from here, our queen's knight is developed on c6. Sometimes you can start with a6, it doesn't matter, and it all depends on what White does. So a6 can come first before knight c6 or vice versa. The next move you want to think about, the e-pawn will sit on e5 someday. To break open the center, your dark squared bishop will sit on h6, and the development of your king's knight will depend on the position. For example, knight e7 is more preferably intending to put your knight on f5 someday, right? Now what about the Fianchetto Gambit decline where White advances his e-pawn to e5? I said our main plan is to go pawn to d6 and continue playing in the Alekhine style. For example, if White plays pawn to f4, you first of all take, forcing them to take with their f-pawn, and then next you think of playing pawn to e6 followed by knight e7 to over control the d5 square together with your queen. Then next you develop your queen's knight, and in case of bishop b5, you simply go pawn to a6 followed by pawn to b5 to create room for your light squared bishop on b7. And sometimes even if White doesn't play bishop b5, you can still go a6 and b5 just to pave way for your light squared bishop to sit on b7. And on the king side, the first move I'd consider is pawn to h6, stopping knight g5 or bishop g5. Normally the dark squared bishop sits on g7 later in the middle game, or it can also be traded off along this diagonal depending on what White does. So I still want to give you more content on this Gambit and see what else White can do to destroy our game plan. And before I continue, I have good news for you guys. The good news is I have started organizing my videos in their specific playlists to make it easier for you guys to find them. For example, you can find all of my tutorial videos on the Modern Gambit, or the so-called Fianchetto Gambit, in this playlist called the Modern Gambit Collection. You can also find all of my GMO episodes in this playlist titled Guess My Opponent's series. I also have a playlist for opening blunder checks. Also, if you want to send your challenges, or if you want to play against me just for learning purposes, you can do that by going to my website www.kasperchess.com, and here is where you're going to find all the games that I play against my dear subscribers, titled the Kasper Chess Challenge playlist. Lastly, all that is meaningless if you guys don't subscribe to this channel, because I mean, what are we doing? I believe I give you guys quality content, and I don't think we deserve this so far. I mean, I'm just judging from what I see on YouTube from other chess channels. So if you love Kasper Chess, share my videos if you can, so that we can grow this community together. Alright, so today we still continue looking at the Modern Gambit, or the so-called Fianchetto Gambit, in real games against real opponents. I believe that you guys learn more by watching me playing the things that I teach you on this channel, right? And just for disclosure, I'm playing this game in Zen mode, meaning I can't see my opponent's rating or their name. Okay, so pawn to e4, g6, as if I want to play the modern defense. So there we see pawn to d4. That's what I'm talking about. Now it's time to surprise my opponent with the move pawn to f5, which is the Fianchetto Gambit. This is unknown to many people. So hoping to see e takes f5, because what else? It's never a good idea to decline this Gambit. Just as I presented in my yesterday's video, you need to watch that. So the idea is not to take once again, because White would just mate you in one. So you better go pawn to d5. Pawn to d5 creates an impression as if you want to get back your pawn. And Here we see one decline variation. Now this is not really a decline variation because either ways you can just go queen d6 to protect your g6 pawn in advance, just like I said in my yesterday's tutorial video. Now after d6, the plan is to go knight c6, or first of all begin with pawn to s6, then pawn to e5 in the near future, knight e7 and bishop h6. So you first of all go queen d6. I'm expecting to see pawn takes, after which I'm going to take back. In fact, let me just pre-move, because this is what most people do. I've played this gambit several times and I have good results with it, good stats, so to speak. If knight to f3, I'm just going to play knight c6, because what else? Followed by pawn to s6, waiting for white to take my second pawn. What are they waiting for? For God's sake. So anyways, and if anything, I still have bishop g7. So this is what I'm talking about. Knight c3 calls for pawn to s6, guys. We don't want our queen to be chased from that square. Oh, and it's time to guess my opponent's rating since I'm playing this game in Zen mode. I think my opponent is rated between 2200 and 2250. I'll settle with that. By the way, if I wanted, I could have taken the pawn on f5. That is if I wanted. So finally, f takes g6 has happened. Now I have to take back. So you can see the purpose of playing queen d6 earlier, just to protect the g6 pawn in advance. And now we've seen pawn to g3. So I never covered all these moves that my opponent is playing. Nevertheless, I will still stick to my plan. Knight c6. The idea is not to take on d4, by the way. So my opponent is playing solid moves. There we see bishop f4 in an effort to deflect my queen. Like, in case I play queen b4, my opponent will be happy to take the g6 pawn. So I better just maintain my queen in the same rank. So queen e6 check. I'm still protecting my g6 pawn, by the way. If queen e2, I can even retreat my queen, protecting my g6 pawn. That's the whole idea. We don't have to lose this pawn. But there we see knight g e2, blocking the check. This gives me time to play bishop g7. By the way, taking on d4 was going to be a blunder due to check, and I was going to lose that knight. So bishop g7 is a very good candidate move. And now knight takes d4 is valid. So waiting to see what white is up to. Maybe queen d2 and castle long, because what else can they do? Okay, there we see bishop e3. And now I think I can even go back or play queen f2. Sorry, queen f7. So queen f7 makes a lot of sense to me. Still protecting my g7 pawn and paving way for my light squared bishop. You can sit anywhere. And pawn to e5 will still come. By the way, queen f7 is great. Not only is my queen defending the g6 pawn, but also the d5 pawn. But seems like white knows exactly what he is doing. I'll probably lose one of these pawns, but I better lose the d5 pawn. So if bishop takes, I'll just take with my other pawn. So even if white doesn't fall for your trap, even if white doesn't completely accept your gambit, you can still find ways to get back into the game. And this is kind of the Benko gambit if you think about it, where we sacrifice two pawns because we know that our rooks are going to stop those pawns. Okay, now queen d3, I don't know why, but that makes no sense to me because I can just castle long. White is attacking nothing. I can even play pawn to e6 if I want, but I want to go pawn to e5 at some point. Yep, like here, pawn to e5. Yeah, we see pawn takes, but I have knight takes. Okay, my opponent just blundered. So knight n3 check wins the queen, and my opponent just resigned. Okay, I said my opponent was rated between 2200 and 2250, and it turns out I was not very far from what we're seeing here. 2213, that's not bad. It still falls in my prediction. Right, hopefully you learned one or two things. Let me know in the comment section if you did, and hey, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and also share this video if you can, so that we can grow this community together. Follow me on Patreon for more. Until next time, bye bye.